Hey guys, this is Jeff Stanek with Figured Out Baseball. Got a very exciting Figured Out Baseball podcast for you today. We're being joined by Tom Riley. Tom is the head coach at Goldey-Beacom College, Division II school in Wilmington, Delaware. Very excited to have him on the program. I'll give you a background on him so you know a little bit about him. And there's some very interesting things in his bio that I'd love to get into during the podcast. But I'll give you the background. He is from Indianapolis, Indiana. Played at Hanover College, which is a Division III school in Hanover, Indiana. Finished up there in 1998. In 2001 through 2004, got into his first college coaching job. He was an assistant coach at Dominican College, a Division II school in Orangeburg, New York. He spent 2 seasons there as the hitting coach, 2 seasons as the pitching coach. Both seasons he was the hitting coach, the team hit .309 or better. And then both years that he was the pitching coach, the team led the conference in ERA and strikeouts. In his 4 years there, the team won 3 conference titles. They also had 8 players move on to play professional baseball. Then from 2008 through 2012, he was the owner and personal trainer at Riley Performance Training in Texas. During that time, he did coach some high school level summer baseball. He got back into college ball for the spring of 2013 as an assistant coach at Delaware State University. He was there from 2013 through 2015. That's an NCAA Division I program. In 2013, the team led all of Division I baseball with 3.02 steals per game. In 2013, they were the MEAC, that's their conference, the MEAC North Division champions, finished with a 21-3 conference record. They hit .317 as a team that year, which was 5th best in the NCAA Division I, and finished with an overall record of 33-15. The next year, 2014, the team led all of NCAA Division I with a .336 batting average. That's pretty amazing, pretty great number. And also led all of Division I with a .435 on base percentage. They were second in all of NCAA Division I schools, averaging 8.2 runs per game. They finished with the 2014 season with a 30-16 overall record. In his time at Delaware State, Coach Riley had 23 players that were named to the all-conference team. On November 30th, 2015, he was hired for a pretty unique opportunity at Goldey-Beacom to reinstate their baseball program. The program existed from the 1920s through the 50s. It had been about 60 years since Goldey-Beacom had fielded a college baseball team, and Coach Riley was hired to bring the team back again. He was hired in November 2015 and was supposed to have players on campus for the fall of 2016, which is certainly something that we should talk about. 2017 was their first spring back in action. In 2018, only the second year for the program, they finished with a 17-15 conference record. Pretty impressive to have a winning record in your in conference in your second season. That season, team also had 4 players named to the all-region team. They began 2020 with a pretty good showing, but the 2020 season is, we're talking during the quarantine, the 2020 season was cut short, but it seemed like the team was going to be maybe the best that they've had since being reinstated. But Coach Riley, really appreciate you being on the program today. I'm looking forward to talking about all this stuff with you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Jeff. I really appreciate the opportunity.
I usually like to start with something from the bio that stands out, and there are several things for you that I'd love to get into. But the first one is maybe the most obvious one, starting a program from scratch at Goldey-Beacom. It's something that has always been kind of an intriguing thing to me. Can you kind of take me back to when you first heard about the opportunity, what made it intriguing to you, and what made you ultimately decide to take on this challenge?
Yeah, it was a really great opportunity. I think it was probably August of that year, and I think I was out recruiting, and somebody had said something to me. They knew I was at Delaware State, and a coach in the conference in the CAC that said, hey, I hear Goldey-Beacom's going to start a baseball program. And I was like, who? I knew who they were, and I knew that we knew that Goldey-Beacom had a great business school, and it was in the same region. So I reached out to somebody that I knew, and I said, is Goldey going to start a program? And he said, that's got to be, no, I don't think so. But then he called me back the next day, and he said, yeah, they are. So, I was interested right away. I mean, in the CAC, which is where I was at Dominican, and in the same region I was in, wouldn't have to move very far. I was excited about, the opportunity to be a head coach, and then, starting a program from scratch, all really exciting type things. So, I pursued the job, and, luckily enough, worked out for me.
Starting a program from scratch is probably, I'm sure it's very exciting, and there probably comes a period where there's a lot of work. Obviously, you've got to grind to get kids signed. You had to sign a full team with, basically a spring and a summer to do that. What was that like? There's so many things to sort out. A lot of times when a program starts from scratch, a coach is given a full calendar year before they've got to get guys on campus, but you didn't have that. What were the first maybe 6 months or so like for you, especially getting your feet on the ground and trying to hire assistants, trying to get kids committed? Can you just kind of talk us through that a little bit, if you remember it? You may not have slept, and it may just be a blur for you, but.
Well, it was exciting, and it was very, it was really all about recruiting. That, to me, was the most important thing for us at the time, filling out a roster. And then, I wanted that roster to be good. So, being the fact that I didn't get hired till November or December, they'd already had the initial signing date. So there were a lot of guys that weren't out there anymore. But luckily I was in the region as a recruiting coordinator, so I had a list, and, I just went and started attacking my list. I mean, I was very lucky at the time that there was a couple guys that weren't really good fits for me. Well, we weren't the right fit for them at Del State that I'd offered, and I actually got to get our all-time hits leader at Goldey-Beacom I offered when I was at Delaware State. So that worked out really good for me. But it was just recruiting every day. I mean, we had a plan, and, I felt like, the best way to go about it was, kind of fill half and half with transfers and freshmen. I didn't want to bring in 25 freshmen, and then I wanted those guys to be able to grow and continue to have a regular recruiting class every year. So, it was, the work was, trying to convince transfers that we could win, because they know they only had 2 years. Those freshmen who became seniors this year were awesome, and they've done so much for our program. But those guys that came in that were juniors that knew they only had 2 years to win, it was work. We had to show the vision of what we had and show the fact that we knew that we could come in and compete right away. The good part, I guess, is that where most coaches during their season, don't get to go to a lot of junior college games or don't get to go to a lot of high school games, I was able to. So, in February, when normally we're opening up our season, I could be down in South Carolina watching junior college games. Once the high school season started, I could be out there doing that. So it was 6 months of recruiting. I did hire an assistant, pretty soon afterwards. And just one of those other things I got really lucky on. Guy that I didn't know at all. Either emailed me. I think the day after maybe that was announced, it said that, hey, he was in the area and really wanted to talk and whatever. And I think I blew him off for a couple months. I was like, I'm recruiting. But that guy is like, when you start a program, it's not you, it's we, and it's been we from the start, even when it was just me. But we became me and him really early, and like Matt Trade has been here the whole time. So the guy that I didn't know at all at the time, people saw us right now, they would be like, oh, those guys have known each other forever. We're like, best of friends, but like, just a, really knowledgeable, really hungry, guy that just gets after recruiting. One of the best hitting. I mean, the Orioles hired him, and he stayed here with us. Great hitting guy, great catching guy, just a great baseball guy. So that 6 months was just a couple months with just me, and then Matt really jumped on and really helped us start this thing, the right way, which, some of the, the recruiting part was that 6 months, or so I loved. I mean, it was great. We get to talk to everybody every day. I still lived in Dover, so that actually worked out for me because I had an hour commute home. I'd go up to the office every day, and then, I got an hour to talk on the phone to recruits, to and from. So that really worked out really well. The hard part came when it was August and we had to put like a turtle together.
Oh man, tell me about. I'm a former recruiting coordinator, and I really love that side of things, and I like hearing what other guys talk about during the recruiting process and kind of what you sell. Can you talk to me as if I was a recruit during that first season, or during the first recruiting season, early 2016, and just kind of tell me what you were, what were the conversations like that you were having with kids? How did you possibly convey that this first year program has got a chance to be competitive and win, and this could be a really good fit for you?
Yeah, it's funny. It's like if you were to be on the phone with me 4 years ago, it's probably a lot different than being on the phone with me right now, because I've changed a lot, and we're always growing and trying to figure things out. But really, it was just selling our vision. If I could get somebody on the phone, I could sell them what our vision was. And we were big into, what we were going to become here. I had no history, but the at Goldey-Beacom, but the exciting part about Goldey-Beacom is there's kids that can come here and you can create that history. So, obviously we sold a lot of successes that I had as an assistant, but really it was a whole lot more about what we were going to create at Goldey-Beacom. The fact that, we thought that we could hit the ground running, with our plan to develop guys. We talk a lot about our core values and what matters to us, about the fact that it's all about the experiences and the relationships you make. And, it's really, that 2-year decision or 4-year decision, whatever you make, that goes on and affects you for the next 40 years. I mean, that's one of the things that I love so much about, coaching a college kid, because, their parents have done so much for them their whole life, and now they have that 4 years where it's like, hey, am I going to, continue to, be what I've been, or am I going to grow into the man that I'm going to become? And that's, so it's a lot of selling to that, our vision, what we thought we could do.
Those conversations are always so interesting with kids, and when you really get a kid to buy into your vision, it's such a high as a coach when you get a kid that's excited about what you've got going. You said to me before we started recording that you had a plan, basically a 5-year plan, that you thought, within this period of time we should be legitimately competitive. But you thought that this year's team, even though you didn't get to conference games, you thought this was going to be the most competitive team that you've had in conference. What's been the difference every year to year as far as the caliber of players you've been able to get on campus, or is it the development of a culture and getting kids that's making it tangible, like what Goldey-Beacom baseball is about? Is there anything in particular you can kind of put your finger on that it sort of helped to develop the team to what they would may have been this year?
Yeah, they answered. I think you answered every one of those questions.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, well, no, but it was yes to all those things. We have continued to bring in a more talented player each year, but also more than anything, it is the fact that the culture that we've created, and the guys that were seniors were freshmen when we were creating it. So it's not even like it's one of those things where, hey, a guy comes in and then they're like, who's this guy at the front of the room telling me this is how we're going to be? It's like, those guys created the culture. The seniors in our class, they were every bit a part of it. So it's a culture that they've created. So that way, when we integrate new guys into our program, it's already there. And we had a young guy that, talked about, his experience, and he was just like, hey, I thought when I came here, it was going to be like, oh, you're a freshman, you do this, you do that. And it's like, he's like, and then, next thing you know, it's like the older guys are grabbing stuff for me and helping me out. And it's like, well, yeah, that's what we do. Our freshmen, they help out, but, in our program, I think that the seniors carry the biggest load, So it's things like that. And I think that we were on to things early, and we had some really good players, and I think that, we probably took a step back in year 3. You probably just didn't bring in the exact right guys to fit us, but we learned from that, and this was a year where, you combine really good players, guys with some experience, guys that have developed, with a really good culture, and where guys, the most important thing to them is being great teammates. That leads to those things, because there's not the bickering and the fighting, because, we show up to our first weekend of the year, and, kind of weird, that I would say this to them, but, I went out to them, and we're in the outfield beforehand, and it was just like, hey, I know everybody's all excited, to come down here and win a series or whatever, but, all I care about today is that we go out, we're great teammates, we play good baseball, and, we pull for one another and just get after it. And we did win that series, but we're playing the game, we're trying to play the game for each other. Do we lose our way sometimes? Sure, everybody does, but I definitely think that, when you're a little bit more worried about the guy next to you and his well-being than, the fact that you're 0 for 4, definitely helps you.
There's a couple ways that I'd like to go from that, and I guess the first one is just to talk about team culture. With these podcasts, Coach Riley, I like to try to create some depth with things that maybe a lot of coaches out there have heard of, but maybe there isn't, this concrete definition for. And one of those things is culture. It's something you hear a lot of people say, and it's something that I think every coach is aware of, but it's something that, in my opinion, the really good and the really good programs who win and sustain winning, they create a culture that's a little bit of a different level. Vanderbilt is one of those programs that I think that you talk a lot, that you hear a lot about the culture that's created there. TCU is like another one of those programs. How as a head coach, how would you define what your culture is as a team, and then how do you go about beginning to create that? Think of it as just if you're talking with maybe a young guy who's just getting into the college coaching game, or even a high school coach who wants to create a culture at that level, which is a different animal because you're not recruiting your players most of the time. But how would you define team culture, and then how do you go about creating a team culture?
Well, that's a really good question, and so such a depends type answer as well. We've done, culture has just become a huge catchword, and we're just as guilty as anybody else. We have the whole tagline, the core values, like the Brian Kane. We strike, STRIKE, selfless toughness, relentless, integrity, Kaizen, and excellence. And there's nothing wrong with that, and I completely believe in it. But that's not, just because we have a little tagline, that's not going to create the culture. We've always had that tagline, and the culture is like a living, breathing thing. Something that I've learned, it's really not about that. We've never really gone around and just said, hey, strike, 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 strike. 386, with 386 in carry, which we our guys know those things. We talk about that at the start of the year, our standards, our expectations, how we do things. But to me, more than anything, our culture is how we live. And, are the coaches modeling what we're asking our players to do? Are our seniors modeling? Are our juniors modeling it? And modeling that behavior creates that culture. And then there's a ton of things that we do to build that camaraderie, that culture, that, I've stolen from other people. A couple of the things that I thought that we did, this year that were really great is, we have a question every day. And, we start our practice off, and, we all would answer a question. And so that way the person's up in front of the team talking about himself. When they're done talking for 2 to 3 minutes, then their teammates get to ask them questions. And I thought that was awesome. The guys actually get to know things about themselves. Like we did that the first day I started because I knew that they were all going to not really love talking about themselves, and I don't care. I'll talk about myself all I want. But, I think what we did this year was the first day, I think I got it from Dan Heathner at Dallas Baptist, just listening to something, was, we said, you're a turtle on a fence post. How'd you get there? And, obviously nobody's, that turtle's not climbing that fence post. So it was just a good way for everybody to kind of get to tell their story in 2 to 3 minutes. Sometimes it's 4 or 5. Sometimes it's really serious. Sometimes it's hilarious. And, you get a lot of, guys loving on each other. You get a lot of guys busting each other's balls a little bit, which is fun because, when you really love each other, you want to, have, play those games with each other. I thought that really brought the team together. Other thing I thought that we did this year that I thought went really well is I also got from the same person, Dan Heathner at Dallas Baptist, a guy that I've never met in my life. But, we had a daily recognition board when we played. So basically all we did is we put our whole roster, in an Excel sheet on a sheet of paper and posted it up on the board. And anytime somebody on the team saw somebody doing something that we would be proud of, that was a little bit out of the ordinary or just for the team, somebody posted it up there and then signed their name to it. And it, could have been as simple as like, hey, this pitcher got here, half an hour early and was dragged all the screens around the field by himself. Or this guy, this guy had a tough day, and then I had a tough day, and I'm coming off the field. He's the first one to greet me. He's not worried about what was happening to him. So, and we started that, and the first couple times it's like it was really good, but by the end it's like every single person's name's full, and it's like, well, it's not like really a participation trophy. It's more like every single person on your roster needs to do something on every day that's positive for the team. So if that's happening, then somebody sees something and they put it up there. And on road games, I would read it over the bus, and then at home games we would read it the next day before we started. We'd go through all those things that happen, and that way everybody gets recognized. Because sometimes that guy that doesn't play very much, he's just as important as the guy that plays every day. And then, those guys that play every day come to realize that, the home run you hit wasn't the big deal that day. It was what you did right here, where people recognize that he's doing those little things to help his teammates out, and the little things that help us win. So I thought that really was a great exercise that we did. And, I wasn't sure, but when we told our guys, the season was over, and we had played the day before, the last thing we did before we left, they wanted to hear the daily recognition board for the last time of the day before. So that tells me that guys really, truly valued that. And doing things like that, to me, is why it's like, it's not about what I want our culture to be. Our culture is going to be what the players want it to be. You know, there's one of me. I've got 4 or 5 assistants, so there's 5 or 6 of us. There's a lot more of them. You know, and we really don't think about it as us and them. It's us. It's all of us. So that culture, you know, comes from our alumni. You know, the guys that graduated a few years ago. It's the current guys that we have. The new guys we have coming in, we're excited about that aren't yet stepped on campus. You know, it's a living, breathing thing. You know, and I think that you want to do something daily to encourage it, but it's really about, you know, having those right guys and modeling the right behaviors as opposed to just having a tagline. Now, I mean, I think the tagline is great, especially for guys early, because it kind of does spell out how we want you to behave. But, you know, we could sum it up. It's like, hey, you know, love your teammates and do the right thing, you know, and, you know, that is really, you know, what we want it to be about, you know, and I think that, you know, we're getting there.
It's such an interesting answer, and it's a topic that I'd like to talk a lot about because I think there's a difference between a really talented team and a talented team that has the sort of it factor, and I think that a lot of that is, you know, just the team really caring about one another and caring about team success. And I've been a part of teams that were really talented that didn't perform that well. I've been a part of teams that, you know, did perform really well and won a lot of games, but sort of at the end of the year, it was like they just didn't have whatever it was that you needed to sort of push yourself over the edge. And I look back at some of those teams and think that, you know, maybe some of these team culture type of things are maybe what you miss. And I've been a part of teams that have valued some of the things that you just talked about, like the team kind of getting to know each other. And I've been a part of teams that were really good that wasn't something that, you know, the head coach's perspective was, you know, these guys, they'll get to know each other as much as they want to outside the field. And like when we're here, we're just going to, you know, focus on baseball, and like I don't care if they're friends off the field or whatever. It's interesting to me to hear different perspectives of different coaches and kind of how this stuff, you know, works. Obviously, you can't have. It seems to me you just can't have one or the other. If you're really talented and the guys don't really care about each other, that's not going to work. If you guys love each other but the talent's not there, well, that's not going to work. It seems to me like you kind of need a little bit of both.
Yeah, I think so, and I think that, and I think it can work both ways. I think that you should be true to yourself, and you know, I've worked for some coaches, and some are different than others, and they've all been. I was really lucky, and all the guys I've worked for have been really successful and really good coaches. They don't all do it exactly the way I do it, and because they shouldn't. We're all different people. So, you know, I 100% completely agree with you. I think it can work both ways, but I definitely think that the big thing that you see with guys, whether they're saying, hey, you need to know each other, you need to do this or you need to do that, is, you know, all the coaches that I've worked for really loved and cared about their players. And you see that they do that, whether they're, you know, whether we're talking about, you know, being together or not, you know, it's modeling that behavior that I think is really important. So, yeah, I mean, there's tons of ways of doing it. I just think that, you know, you got to be true to yourself, and if that's something that fits your personality, then I think that works. But like, you know, guys know when you're fake. So, you know, being fake is probably, you know, because you hear somebody does something and you're like, oh, I'd like to try that. It's like, okay, well, does that fit you? I mean, I know, like you mentioned earlier, we're in the quarantine right now. I mean, there is a Zoom going on right now, I'm sure.
Eight Zooms going on right now.
On the hour, every hour, and, you know, I've listened to a lot of them. I love listening to people and learning more about what we do. and learning what other people do and things that fit us. But as opposed to just collecting information, it's really about how we connect with our players and how we can communicate that information that we have. And, everybody does something a little bit different. We don't want a potpourri of, hey, well, we're going to do this like this one, this like this one, this like, it's like we're going to be us. The fun thing about being us is, we change every day and, and we learn and we grow. But, just trying to be somebody else and something that you're not, sometimes I think really backfires on people that are just like, hey, you know what, I'm a lifelong learner, I just want to learn, I want to, do this and that. It's like, so am I. I mean, that's the most important thing. I mean, we talked about, those core values, and we talked about Kaizen, continuous improvement. We tell our players all the time, I don't care, what we care about, growing and learning more. But I also think that it's also become like kind of a catchword where it's like, hey, I've been on the most suits, and it's like, well, that's awesome, but it's important to learn and grow, but it's also important to connect with your players, and it's important to be yourself and do all those things. So I probably got off on a little bit of a tangent there.
That was good. It was great because there are so many calls going on right now, and I've I put myself back in the shoes of coaching, and I don't know that I'd have interest in being on a Zoom call a day. I just, not that I don't want to learn. I love to learn. I mean, I don't coach now, and I still like to learn. I really, I'll, if I need a break from work or whatever, I'm doing something baseball-wise. I'm watching some video or reading about something, or I like to do it, whether I'm coaching or not. And these podcasts and all the videos on the website are interesting to me, and they're great ways to learn, but I just don't know that I could do it. And it's not that I don't want to learn. It's just how much could you possibly take in all this new stuff? And I don't know, at some point you can't forget about who you are and what your core values are and what you believe. As a hitting coach, I don't know that you want to just change everything and do something completely different this year than you did last year. I think there are guys out there that you kind of see and read about that seemed like they change their whole philosophy every year based on this or that, and I don't know. That's not. I think it'd be a lot. I think it'd be a lot to take in. Again, I think the Zoom calls are great, and a lot of the information being shared is great, but I don't know. There's like you said, I think that connecting with players and just figuring out what really works. One of the popular things on social media is hitting Twitter, and I know you're a hitting guy, a little bit of everything guy, hitting guy, pitching guy, everything else. But according to hitting Twitter, it's all about this. Just one example, but it's all about mechanics, and you got to have these perfect mechanics. And to be a hitting coach, you've got to be a biomechanical specialist, and you've got to have a degree in kinesiology, and that's what you can read, and it really can be kind of intimidating. But I think you can be a pretty good hitting coach without doing all that stuff. As a coach that's actually out there right now, how much do you put stock in that sort of thing? Or if you're going out to hire a hitting coach, a pitching coach, are you looking for the guy that is the most advanced technologically, or are you looking for a guy that seems to have the best feel? Are you looking for someone in between? What's an attractive candidate to you for someone to hire?
Well, there's so much there. Luckily, I'm not out looking to hire a hitting coach because, like I mentioned, Matt Trait, like you said, I am a hitting guy, but Matt Trait coaches our hitters. I'm really lucky, and I have a good staff, and Matt Trait is our hitting coach. Mike Payton, who coaches our defense, really coaches the infielders and the outfielders. I don't know, how most people don't work it that way, but he kind of runs with both. Dan Galati coaches our pitchers, and then I actually coach the base running. So, we all have our niche in our program, and it's tough for me to answer. Like, all the things that you said probably aren't the things that I would be looking for in a hitting coach, because we are progressive. So if you were to ask, we have a hitting and a pitching Rapsodo. We have blast sensors. We do a lot of measuring, and the good friend of mine that coaches at Frostburg State, Anthony Williams, laugh about like the fact that we play them, and he's gonna maybe have 4 or 5 outfielders. We're not gonna hit any balls on the ground. But, and we joke and laugh about that, but to me, it's not about being technologically advanced, biomechanically advanced. To me, the most important trait in an assistant coach is somebody that just gets after it and is open to learn. I would rather have somebody that is aggressive and wants to learn and doesn't think he knows everything, as opposed to somebody that does. I'm lucky in that I have somebody that knows a ton. But the best thing I can say about Matt Trait is he doesn't think he knows anything. You've got a guy that really, really knows something, because he's out there every day working to become a better hitting coach. And I think that I don't want to bash old school, and I don't want to bash young, because I think that, to me, the answer is somewhere in the middle. Which, if we're talking about Twitter gurus and hitting type thing, to me, the guy that I think is awesome right now is Eugene Bleeker, because he has been down that rabbit hole of, hey, we're gonna hit everything up in the air, and we're gonna just build a bigger engine, and now he's come back around to where it's like, okay, well, all that stuff is really important, but then a lot of this stuff that's a little more old school is important as well. So a little mix between all those things, I think, is a better answer, as opposed to hey, you know what, all the young guys are right, all the old guys are right. I think that nobody's really right. I think we're all, looking for answers. But I tend to think that the answers are probably more in the middle of the spectrum, as opposed to one end or the other, I guess, is what I would say. There's just a ton of value in discounting a guy that understands the data or hasn't played. I think is nuts. But I also think that discounting somebody that has a lot of experience is nuts as well. So, I try not to discount a young guy that's really smart and knows a lot and has a lot of data and can help us, and I don't discount the guy that's been around the block and coached a ton of people for a long time. I think that there's so much value out there. You just have to kind of sift through it.
I want to go back to something else that you mentioned a while back, and get back on just what I think are sort of team building and team culture type things. I think it's a cool track to stay on. And you mentioned a while back just about how it's important for your players to be a good teammate every day.
Yeah.
And that's something that I think is really undervalued at the high school level, probably more so in summer baseball than it is in high school baseball, because in summer ball, it becomes about the individual. It becomes about getting this person their innings, and this guy's going to start this game and the next guy's going to start the next game because everybody paid and everybody's got to play a pretty equal amount, and this pitcher's going to throw 3 innings, followed by this guy 2 innings, followed by this guy 2 innings, and that's just sort of how it's scripted, and it's not so much about winning in summer ball as it is about exposure. And there's you can understand a lot of that, but I think there's also something that's probably lost there as well. So when guys get to campus, one of my experiences as a coach was that freshmen don't always come in, and maybe more times than not, they don't come in with a real grasp on being a good teammate because they're not used to it, because high school season's fairly short. Summer ball, which they're going to play more games in summer and fall. It's not really about that. It's not really about the team as much. What does it mean for you to be a good teammate once you're actually on a team where winning is it, as opposed to showcasing yourself? Winning is the thing, and to win you've got to perform as a group, and you've got to have teammates that that are supportive of one another, to various degrees. What does it mean for you, for the Goldey-Beacom program, to be a good teammate?
Yeah, it's being there for your teammates. I think is really big. It's funny. It's not so much as just always being there to say, coach was hard on you here, you blah blah blah. But it's being there for your teammates. And to me, I think that one of the best ways that you can be there for your teammates is to do your own job, which is kind of going around the other way. But like when we're talking about at the end of practice, and everybody in every program does something at the end of practice for the most part, cleaning up the field. Like, are you going to be, hey, somebody else will do that, or are you going to be the one guy who runs around and does? Because you're making something that way somebody else doesn't have to do that. Not always being there, I think is big. It's like, and that's one of the guy that is really nice, or a guy that tells you what you want to hear. It's the guy that's always there. He's always there. If somebody needs anything, he's gonna be there. And that to me, that's so. That's a great.
For you, does being a good teammate include at any point being tough on one another, or having the trust in a teammate to be able to, for lack of a better term, to be able to call a teammate out, not necessarily call them out in front of other people, but be able to go to a teammate and say, hey, this is not okay for our team. Like, you've got to do better than this. You've got to make a better decision than that. You've got to give better effort than that. Is that part of what you talk about with your players?
It's big, and it's one of those things that, like, I think to be that type of person, it takes it takes time. I don't think that a guy comes into a program and from day one is calling people out for things. You earn that respect by you doing things the right way. And when you're the guy that's doing things the right way, well, then yeah, you've got the platform to make sure that this guy knows this is how we do things. It's tough for a guy to not show up to class and get on his paper for not showing up to class. But what some of our better teammates, I think that they come in and the first thing that they do is they model all those behaviors themselves. And once that everybody sees that that's what they're going to do, absolutely, like, hey, this isn't how we do things. This is how we do things, and I'll be right here helping you do that. Rather than just telling somebody to do something, showing them how to do something. To me, that's a lot more important. I mean, anybody can tell somebody what to do. You got to tell them what to do, but also show them.
And one of the cool things about college baseball is that you got 4 years, and the time goes by so quickly as a player. You blink your eyes in freshman year's over, and you blink your eyes in sophomore year's over, and then all of a sudden you go from being the one who's a lot of times just trying to feel your way through as a freshman, and then as a sophomore, it's your time to sort of step up and take more of a role in the team. And as a junior, all of a sudden, it's a lot of times you're expected to take more of a leadership role, and particularly as a senior, and it goes by so fast. And as a college coach, you're always waiting for that next guy to step up, and sometimes it's like there's like a drag effect of just players kind of realizing what their role needs to be. And it's always a really interesting dynamic to me. And again, kind of going back to just what makes a team good, I think some of the better teams that I've been a part of have had guys that have understood that role pretty early on and aren't afraid to step up and not only model it, but then also take the vocal part of it as well.
Well, yeah, and the coaches aren't going to be everywhere. So, if there's something that we don't see that guys shouldn't be doing, then absolutely they need to make sure that, if you truly love your teammate, you're going to make sure that they know if they're doing something that they shouldn't be doing, as opposed to like, oh, well, that's him. He's allowed to do that, So I'd agree with you. I think that, it's really important that it's modeled, but also, enforced through the team. And there's definitely a fine line there. Sometimes guys want to come in and do a lot of talking, and we typically, want guys to do a lot of acting as opposed to talking. And, but you've earned it when you're doing things the right way to be able to say something to somebody that, hey, how we want to do things around here, that doesn't fit our standards, and, I'd like you to make a change.
One last thing I'd like to get into with you, and I don't want to extend this podcast too much. I'd like to let you go at some point, but I would like to talk about the time that you spent away from coaching, if you don't mind getting into that a little bit. It's something that that not a lot of coaches go through. You coach in college, you leave college baseball, and you have an opportunity to get back in. And just kind of wanted to see if you wouldn't mind talking about that period and sort of what it was, what it was like for you and why you decided to get back into college baseball, and just how much that decision has affected your family and kind of how your family went along with everything and just made those adjustments with you. If you don't mind just talking about that, because I think that Coach Riley, the people that have not coached college baseball sometimes don't understand the commitment that you make when you're in this game, and you've had a chance to get on both sides of it as a coach, and then getting out of it and getting back into it, and it's a lot on family at some point, and you rely on your spouse and other people sometimes. Can you just talk about that a little bit, just what it was like for you to be out of college coaching and then the decision to get back in and ultimately landing at Delaware State?
Yeah. Well, my wife Karen, we were married. We were engaged when I started at Dominican, so we got married and moved to New York from Indiana. And she was there with me for 4 years, and then she got a great opportunity in her career, and it was in Texas. So, she'd done so much for me, and I decided that, it was her turn, and we gave her, we went out to Texas and, moved a little bit closer to her family who was there in Texas as well. And, while we were there, I tried a couple times to get back into it, but I didn't really have any connections in Texas, and, it just started, being about making money, and we had a son while we were on. But I'd been trying to get back in it, and then just an opportunity came up, in 2012 at Delaware State. It was across the country, but J.P. Blanton's the head coach at Delaware State, and one of the guys that I knew from Dominican, Sean Moran, had worked for him. So there was a little bit of connection there, and it worked out really good for me. I mean, my wife, at that time was knew that I needed to get back in and was very supportive, and we moved across the country to get back in. It was it's one of those things where I think that she knew what she was getting into, and because of the first 4 years of our marriage, and and it worked out because we do everything as a team. We had a young son, and we moved to Dover, and kind of bet on myself and the fact that things would work out, and things have gone pretty good for us. So now we have 2 kids, and we live up here in Wilmington, and she also works at Goldey-Beacom now. So things work out really well, but I think that kind of like when you're talking about your team and you want to communicate with your team. I mean, it's the same thing in marriage. So it's like, I had a lot with a wife and a son, but we communicated and worked out what was best for us. I hope I explained that well.
Yeah, you did. And there's something about just when you coach, it's more than a job. And as a former coach, that's something that I don't know that there are a lot of professions out there that are comparable to to coaching, because it's more than just your career, and you don't want to say that like this is who I am necessarily. You're more than a coach, but at the same time it's more than a job. Why was it such a pull for you when you got out to be able to get back in? Like, what was it about coaching that just, because you were still coaching, you were involved in baseball. I mean, you were training, you were a trainer at your own facility, but you coached in the summer ball. It's not like you didn't coach, it's not like you were totally away from the game, but what was it about college baseball that brought you back, that drew you back in?
It's hard to say what it was at the time. At the time, it was probably just competition. I wanted to get back and compete again, and that's what I truly love to do. I mean, I love going out and recruiting, and I love, you're competing against each other, other people at that level. But really, to me, college is always, that's the level that, it's such a special level. For one, like, with high school versus college, the guys at college, they want to be there. You recruited them, you brought them there, they're the guys that you wanted, and they wanted you. The other aspect of it is it's such an important time in guys' lives. This is the 4 years that they grow from being like, a boy with their parents, and their parents, teach them how to make good decisions, and they become, a really good person. But then these next 4 years is when they really decide to be the kind of man that they want to be. And I think that, trying to help develop that, or just even witnessing, when guys come in from freshman to senior year, that's awesome. And that's something that you don't really get if you're, at least I didn't get that, as, coaching a 16-year-old summer team. I thought those were great kids, and it was awesome. But, they show up, and you have your time with them, and they go to practice. But, it's just a lot different, and it's hard to explain until you have been into, a program. But, these players, they're part of your family. We start our year every year with a cookout at my house, and everybody's stuffed into our backyard, and that kind of gets it going. But they're part of our family. Their families are a part of our family. The parents, the alumni, and I think it's special. It's really special about college baseball. It's funny. Like, I even look at my first job at Dominican, and it's funny. I was like 24 at the time, so like all those guys I coached are 1 or 2 years younger than me, and you look at them now, and just the way that they talk about Skip, and the way that that he treats them, and the way that they're treated. I mean, it's a lifelong family, and that's what it was at Dominican. That's what we're doing here at Goldey-Beacom.
That's so cool, and just a really good perspective. This is Tom Riley, everybody. He's the head coach at Goldey-Beacom Division II school in Wilmington, Delaware. The 2020 season got cut short. That would have been Coach Riley's 4th year so it'll be interesting to see what happens next year, especially with a lot of players being able to come back, with people being granted an extra year of eligibility. So we'll be really excited to follow you, Coach Riley, and just follow the program and see what you guys do. But it's pretty evident talking with you that I think that your maturity shows. I think that the different things you've been through in your life have clearly shaped you into what you are right now as a coach. And you sound like a guy that, I don't say this in every podcast, and definitely not saying it just to say it, but you sound like someone that I would send my own kid to play for. And that, I think that says a lot just when you listen to a podcast or you have a conversation with somebody and you think to yourself, either you could see yourself playing for that person or like, I would send my son to play with that guy, and that's I think that's a big thing. And that's what you've showed me in this podcast. So I just appreciate your time so much being here and sharing everything that you did and kind of talking about building the team. And it's been a really great conversation. So again, I appreciate your time very much.
Hey, thank you so much, Jeff. I mean, that's a great compliment. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate the opportunity for giving me to talk about our program and the opportunity that you give all coaches and players out there with the website. It's really needed, and I just really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Well, I appreciate what you said too, and hopefully people get something out of this. And if nothing else, coaches out there that are still maybe trying to find their footing a little bit, I think listening to you is a great start, and hopefully some helps out some young guys. But thank you very much. There's some stuff we didn't get into with you. Might have to have you back again on a podcast, but this time has been very much appreciated again. And I just wish you the best of luck in this weird time during the quarantine, and I do look forward to following your team in the future.
Thanks a lot, Jeff. Anytime.